finally gave the Ringers Philly Crew a podcast. I'm Ben Solak.
And I'm Sheil Kapadia. That's right, just a couple of Philly guys with a new space to fire off some Eagles takes, get caught up in the Sixers chaos, and more.
We'll be coming to you twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays, plus bonus episodes whenever we get breaking news or Philly drama.
Join the fun and follow the Ringers Philly special now on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor. Kyle, Happy New Year.
Man, what a glorious time to be alive, right, Kev? Another year covering basketball, having a good time, parsing the NBA draft, our favorite thing to do. You're looking happy and healthy. Did you have a good break? Are you rested up?
Yeah, I had 10 days straight riding my Peloton, working out every day, eating healthier. Trying to trim that fat I've gained the last 4 years with my dad, and then the pandemic and being back in LA and all the glorious food here.
You looked unhinged when you said that. I don't know why. It seemed like it was like a real traumatic thing. Like, the food is just too. Like,
the food is unbelievable.
Is it the Mexican food? Is that the biggest? What's your biggest temptation?
It's everything. Yeah, I've had like the best Italian I've had here. I've had the best this. I've had the best that. It's everything here in LA, Kyle. We'll have a great dinner next time you're out here. When are you going to come back next?
We will make up a reason. I guess it's a numbers game, right? There's just so many people. You're bound to. The competition is bound to breed some good food. You know something about LA that I wish that we did out here was the al pastor on the vertical spit thing where they shave it off. We don't get that out here. You gotta. There maybe is one. I was really impressed by the Mexican food when I was out there.
I was never a Mexican food guy back in Massachusetts, and now that I come to LA, and I love the tacos, everything with Mexican food, and I try it in other cities, and I'm like, it's not as good. It's not as good as California. Texas has some good. Yeah, Mexican, but not the same level, at least what I've had personally in California.
Jessie says it's an authenticity thing, that there's more actual Mexicans in LA, right? So I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
that is true. Yes, more competition, like you said, more good taco trucks and whatnot. Yeah, very good one. Today we're talking about basketball, though, not good tacos. We're going to be talking about Scoot Henderson.
Down.
I am down to talk tacos. There's a place near me with al pastor chicken. Very good. But today we're going to start off talking about Scoot Henderson, Kyle, because after missing over a month with a nose fracture, he played 6 games to start the season in the G League before suffering that injury. Now he's back. He's played 4 games for the G League Ignite, averaging 19.5 points, 6.5 assists, 5 rebounds, shooting 33% from 3. Not great shooting numbers from behind the arc. He was at near 50% before then, but still really producing. And last night, he finally had like his first viral moment since returning to the court. This massive dunk, totally yammed it on a guy. Looked like Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose type of explosiveness. Just absolutely crushed a dude dribbling once from inside the arc. And it was an example of the athleticism we've talked about him. But Kyle, I thought the best stretch of the game that he had was middle of the fourth quarter. They had a 10 or so point lead, and he just extended it to give them enough cushion for the win. In a matter of like 4 or 5 possessions, he blocked a shot on a drive to the basket, really like sticking to a guy like glue as he tried turning the corner, blocked it from behind. And then on offense, he had a handoff action where he sliced his way to the basket, weaseling through the paint. Then he hit a step back three, and that really gave the Ignite the cushion they needed for the win. He had some turnovers late in the game, missed a shot, but whatever. I thought it was Scoot Henderson's best game since returning and showed why he is, on most people's board, the number 2 prospect.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say weaseling his way. Like you think he sort of conned his way, or is that like a shifty reference to shiftiness? I don't know. He sort of tricked someone into getting into the lane. No, I mean Birmingham couldn't stay in front of him. Birmingham couldn't stay in front of him. That was something, and they kept daring him to go. They were trying to wall off and ice him to his left towards the sideline, and he humbly accepted over and over again. And I think the viral dunk, I believe he went to his right, but he over and over again had success. And I think you hit on something too, is that like I think you potentially are going to get like a combination of ball pressure because he's very strong and very athletic and he moves well. But then you get that gap closing ability that we've seen from him, like getting up to block that shot. He didn't take a huge running start to do that. He's a pretty explosive 1-foot jumper. The turnovers late, you hit on it. I think consistency, he'll have these bizarre brain fart moments where he'll just lose the ball, where I like
those turnovers late in the fourth, right? Like both of them.
Yeah. If you could kind of draw up any sort of like common denominator or common thread among his turnovers, I do think on the right side of the floor, sometimes he'll have an odd, like if he gets walled up, he'll make weird misplaced passes. And then he'll just kind of be weird with the ball sometimes. But I think overall, and this is something we've hit on in the past, is you mentioned Russ, you mentioned Rose. I do think that he is ahead of those guys in terms of like command of his gears. Like I think that he plays with a pace that's pretty mature for somebody as athletic as he is.
No doubt about it. I think that's one of the key things that I really love about his game is that he's not just like a speedster. He's not just going 0 to 100, right? He's also, tapping the brakes, slowing down, using change of pace. And that's where you see the creation ability.
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think with Scoot, most people have him on number 2 on their boards right now, including me. You mentioned a couple weeks ago how like maybe Amen Thompson, we talked about him with the overtime elite. Maybe there's some teams, or perhaps he could just steal that number 2 spot. We've seen 4 games of Scoot since he returned, 10 games total in the G League this season, playing even better than he did last year, just 17 years old. Over the rest of the season with the Ignite, what are some things that you want to see from Scoot to solidify himself as the clear number 2 prospect?
Overall, I mean, I'd like to see shooting consistency, like we said. I mean, the pass placement consistency. Just his ability. I mean, he's been pretty good this year. 61. Synergy has him at 61 assists and 35 turnovers on the year. So the numbers there aren't terrible. And his balance in like the pick and roll, just kind of like continuing to iron those things out. 52.4% of his high pick and rolls, which are the majority of his pick and rolls with the Ignite. He's shooting dribble pull-ups on 52.4, and he's getting to the rim 33.3% of the time, which is pretty good. I like when he gets to the rim. And I just sort of working on taking his passing to the next level, like his patience in like opening up passes or manipulating them, because we've seen that he can get in the lane at will. I feel like that's the next frontier for him. Like once he gets in there, slowing down and thinking the game. Of course, for his young, that's the thing you can lose perspective of, is how young he is. I mean, to be doing those things with the crossover of athleticism that he has, very advanced. So it's hard to like dig him too hard on that front.
I mean, he's only 18 years old.
He's a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes like I think we watch these prospects, like I tweeted out that dunk he had last night, and I was amazed at the amount of responses. Like, how is this guy not in the NBA already? Right? How is he not playing in the NBA?
I was going to ask you, how many teams do you think he could start for at point guard right now?
So I don't know. Like right now, probably not a lot. I mean, we're thinking like just going down the list. Chicago.
That's what I was going to say.
Perhaps Chicago. Yeah. Maybe he'd be starting over Dinwiddie in Dallas. You have Dinwiddie in a 6-man role. You'd have Scoot with Luka in the starting lineup.
The Lakers?
Lakers,
Possibly?
yes, the Lakers for sure. Pistons right now, probably, over Ivy or Killian Hayes. And Cade's out
You
right
think
now.
he'd start over both of those guys right now? I think that's a good barometer for where he is skill-wise. I feel like that he would be over those. Yeah.
Over Kevin Porter, put him in the six-man role, or throw Eric Gordon to another team.
Did you laugh at that Eric Gordon clip the other day where they were like, what kind of improvement? And he just like very flatly goes, there's been no improvement.
Yeah, that's right.
I laughed out loud.
Yeah. I wonder for a guy like that, like you've been on so many deep playoff runs. You've tasted success so much. You're 34 years old right now, and you're playing with all these children. Like, what does that feel like, I wonder, to be in that position? Like,
he's probably
actually experience it, Like, you can read stories about it. You can talk to somebody about it. But to actually experience that, I cannot imagine.
He had no sense of humor about it at all. Yeah, he just had this like, he was like, I just have no sense of humor about this shit right now. And I can relate. I was talking with Sears the other day about like, there's just, if you're a certain age, you don't want to hang out with teenagers, like much less play basketball with them. It's like they are just on a different path.
Not some just play basketball, go on bus rides, plane rides, meetings, everything, dinners.
Right. Poor guy. Anyway, yeah, I think he could start for them. Not every team, but he's somebody to be in the rotation, I think, for a lot of teams in the NBA right now.
I'm sure Eric Gordon and Boban Marjanovic, those two, both in their 30s, only guys on the Rockets in their 30s, have a good time together. Maybe.
Getting
probably
close.
Not.
Maybe they're getting close this season.
Poor Boban, by the way. The joy he brings to the court, and now he's just in Houston. I think for other teams for Scoot, the Clippers, maybe. Would he start over Reggie Jackson? Maybe. Probably not.
Nah,
Jackson's the vet. He's the veteran. Minnesota over D'Lo?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think so. I think that'd be an interesting fit there. Yeah.
San Antonio, of course. So he'd be, we're rattling off a lot of teams here, right? That he would be starting over right now. How about for the teams that actually have a shot at drafting him right now? Like, are there any teams in the lottery that you look at and say, that's the team I want Scoot Henderson to be drafted to, or any preferred fits for him when you project him towards the NBA? Where could he help right now, I suppose, is also the question of these lottery teams.
I think like a pairing right now, I mean, I pulled up quickly here, like just the Tankathon simulation has him going to Charlotte. I mean, like playing next to a big point guard like LaMelo. LaMelo's so deceptively big. I feel like that would be a nice thing for him where he could guard the ball. You could allow LaMelo to kind of be a roamer a little bit more and kind of play to his strength, which is, generating steals and things like that. I think that pairing would work really well. You think about him and Jalen Green, it's kind of a similar dynamic. I guess it makes you wonder what the playing with Ty would be in there, like how that would figure in.
Ty moves out of the way.
I was going to say, or it doesn't figure it at all. He on paper projects really nicely for like the Raptors culture. I don't know that the Raptors are going to have a chance to snag him at that spot. But yeah, I mean, those are a couple just that come to mind. I mean, obviously the Spurs are a blank slate. I like the idea of him and Vassell and Keldon as a three-headed monster because, Vassell has enough size that you could probably play all three of those guys together, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I'd really like that fit. I mean, truthfully, Scoot is one of those guys that could fit anywhere. You draft him and then you figure it out later. Like we talked about the other week with the Thompson twins, fit is a lot more difficult with them than it is with Scoot. The size aspect on defense, those guys have an advantage, the Thompson twins, but Scoot's offense, his creation, I mean, let's just be honest, offense is more important. And I don't think he's going to be some defensive liability. But if you do you feel that way at all with Scoot? Like, do you see him being a target, not just because he's 6'2" on the smaller side, but like, is he potentially a liability on that end of the floor where like fit could become an issue?
I think that would be the only way you could target him and label him a liability because every other box he checks. I mean, he's very competitive. He cares. He's, as we've said, he's stout. I think he could get a whole lot stronger. You can see him guarding up because of those things. He's fast. And because sometimes people see athletes and they do this quick connection and they think like, well, okay, defense, it's like, no, I mean, there are a lot of really good athletes that are pretty terrible defenders because it's such a mental game. And I think he's set up to be solid on that front too. What do you think? You think he'd be a target?
I think anybody who's like under 6'3" will be a target, but that doesn't mean that they will be, effectively targeted. I think with Scoot, when I interviewed him earlier last year, now we're in 2023 in October during the Wemby Scoot week, he told me, he's like, people talk about me like my defense is terrible. He's like, I feel like I put in effort on the end of the floor. I focus, I try hard. I want to be better. Right. Like, I think he took accountability and also showed a desire for growth. So, I mean, I think with his body, the size you're talking about with that thicker frame, the desire to defend, and his actions on the court, it's not just talk. Like, he can fly around off ball. I don't view him as somebody who's going to be, unless his mentality changes, which of course can happen, and he becomes lazy on that end. I think at his current state, he's good. He's good. He's not great. He's not a stopper, but he's good. And I think that's enough for him to be, at least in my book, clearly ahead of Amen Thompson, with that number 3 spot for him, Scoot at number 2. But number 1 for everybody, unless I don't know what you're doing, Victor Wembanyama. So moving on to our weekly Wemby, Kyle. He played 1 game since our last podcast. They lost 84-81. He had 26 points, 18 rebounds, 2 assists. He was only 6 of 18 from the field, but 12 of 12 from the free throw line. He had 18 rebounds, 3 steals, 3 blocks as well. On the season now for Mets 92, he's averaging 22.9 points, 9.6 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 3 blocks, 1 steal. He's shooting 73% at the rim, 39% from mid-range, 30% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. And he also played in the All-Star game, 1 All-Star game MVP. What stood out from you this past 10 days or so with Wembanyama playing in the All-Star game, and then also the loss they had?
I watched part of the All-Star game. My eyes were bleeding as I was watching it, but it was a pretty, it was just sort of a dicking around kind of experience. He was just running and catching and dunking. So you don't read a whole lot into that. The shooting efficiency, I think, is the thing that kind of pops out from what you were talking about. All the other stuff is just kind of like a day at the office for him, blocking shots. I love that he has been passing the ball pretty well for somebody as disruptive as he is and as much of a face-up threat as he is. I like to see that. Also, good from the line. I mean, and the other thing that if you want to go and like watch his shot replicability, I thought it was interesting to watch him in the 3-point shootout.
Oh, yeah.
He came in last. He only got 12 points, but
42% he shot, like percentage-wise.
Yeah. He lost. Nando De Colo got him. But I think, I don't know. It was just nice to see him his shot looks good. I guess it's kind of a question of the filtering of the types of shots. It makes you wonder what the percentage is going to do when he goes to the next level. Because is he going to be like a wild, like quick triggered guy that we're going to have to just live with some of the erraticness of the volume of like the choices that he makes, and maybe he'll shoot in the low 30s? Or is he going to be more discerning, and shoot a higher percentage? It kind of makes you wonder.
Well, and if he is discerning, which I think he will be. I think he'll play his role. I think he's smart enough, intelligent enough, like the desire to win is strong with him, right? If he's more discerning with his shot selection, will the percentages rise? Not necessarily. I mean, it doesn't mean he's going to go from 30% from 3 to 37% from 3.
Right.
Like, every shot's an open shot for him.
It's true.
His catch and shoot number, So I think with Wemby, that is the only thing. But I think his rate of improvement as a free throw shooter, his touch near the basket, I think that 3-point percentage and even that mid-range percentage off the dribble is going to rise over the course of time. Like, I would bet on that happening. When people compare him to Kevin Durant, I don't think he's ever going to have a year where he shoots 60% from mid-range. He's not going to be an all-time great level shooter like Kevin Durant is. But I think he can become a very efficient shooter from the outside across positions, but especially for a player of his size. So I feel good because I think sometimes when you're assessing shooting, like his height, man, like any player that's in their teen years, not everybody's shooting 40% from 3 when they're 14 years old, 15 years old. And we have numbers for him going back. Like he used to shoot in the low 60s from the free throw line.
Yeah.
And now he's at nearly 80% at 79.6%. Just rounding up when I spit those numbers out earlier. Like he's shooting the ball well. And he's gotten better every single year. And he works his ass off. So I don't worry about the shooting. And like you said, like he did show how replicable the form is in that 3-point shooting contest as well.
Yeah, I like that. To see them back to back like that. That was nice to see. And I think another thing to keep in mind here is let's not be unreasonable, because as tall as he is, his body in terms of like strength and like the generation of power in his legs and things, he's going through a more tumultuous sort of evolution than a normal person would be, and I think that he's going to start to level out. And I think as he gets stronger, I think it's going to be consistent. We'll see some more consistency. Speaking of like the mid-range thing, did you see that stat the other day where I was talking about like contested mid-range pull-up shots? Because I was thinking about Anthony Edwards, and his percentage was like 26.8. You talked about KD. This is another testament. Just don't compare people to KD. There might be like little glimpses of KD. KD has taken 188 heavily according to Second Spectrum. This is just for you, KOC. This is a little treat. 188 heavily contested dribble pull-up jumpers this year, and he shot 53.7% on those. So let's not bring up his name. That's all I'm saying.
So who is the comp? Can I bring up Gen Z Kareem?
Well,
is that fair?
Gen Z Kareem.
Yeah,
I wasn't indicting you.
I know, but who can we compare him to then? Like I'm speaking on behalf of the people who do compare him to Kevin Durant.
My hands are in the air. I don't know. The Xenomorph from Alien. Like I don't know. Like what do we compare him to? We haven't seen anything like him before. Like if he truly puts on weight, like we joked about, like he said he wants to get as strong as Giannis and shoot the ball like Kevin Durant. Those are absurd goals. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you compare him to. You'd have to look back and say, like, this guy would play like this today. Maybe that's Kareem. Maybe that's Ralph Sampson. There's nothing comparable. I know we spent a lot of time on Wemby here. And
for what it's worth, just a couple more numbers for Wemby. Catch and shoot from 3, according to Synergy, 33%. Dribble jumpers from 3, 26%. Dribble jumpers from 2, 50%. Small sample sizes on everything. 45 threes, 34 threes, 22s respectively with those percentages that I gave. Small samples. But I think over the course of time, those numbers will rise. I mean, the 50% from 2 is a very small sample of 20 shots, but I'm betting on Wemby. He had some interesting comments. He was interviewed by a French website, and the comment went viral. It was like, Tanking's a weird strategy. Like I find it unreasonable. I try not to think about it. He's saying he doesn't, understand why teams tank. He said something very similar, during the Ignite Mets 92 week in Las Vegas earlier this year. The weird thing is, Kyle, is like nobody's tanking right now in the NBA. Like there's no clear tanking going on, right? Like am I right to say that? I'm not seeing any teams tank at the moment.
I think and this is something I just want to discuss. I don't even know if I have like a clear answer for this myself, but I mean, you brought up the point that there are some teams that are just bad, and it's like the evolution of maybe it's motivated by like the spoils are not as clear since they leveled out the top 3 draft odds. What would you even say is the clear differentiator between tanking and just being bad? I mean, like, because there are teams that are making. Are there literally no teams in the league right now that are making sort of self-sabotaging choices? I mean, like, I assume Cade is like legitimately shut down for the year.
He is.
They're not holding him longer than they're supposed to.
True. It's true. He is legitimately shut down. Like that was legitimately something stemming back from last year.
No, I mean, I can't. Do you think there's anyone who's the closest thing to tanking right now than your opinion?
I think like you said, Kyle, like it is unclear where the line is. Like just being bad. I guess tanking, the way I look at it, is it's a choice to be bad, right? I think that's the way I look at it. It's a choice. With Detroit, Charlotte, Houston, San Antonio, those teams are just young and bad. They don't have a choice right now, right? Like it would be stupid of them to trade future picks for a veteran player. That doesn't make sense. they are who they are at the moment.
That in and of itself is sort of tanking, though, right? You're just, it's the absence of present thinking. I don't know. I know we're getting into something kind of philosophical here, but it's just kind of, I don't know. It's interesting if you go back over the years, though, that like I do think that the rules have helped diminish some of this. Like, and there's a lot of talent in the league too. That's the other thing. And I was just kind of looking at, we had some really absurd instances of like low lottery odd teams like leaping up and getting the number one pick. I think like the Zion, because it doesn't rule out that it could still happen. And maybe that's why teams aren't motivated to just completely go all in. Because I mean, New Orleans had a 6% chance to get the number one pick and they got Zion. You know,
that was the first year with it.
Yeah. And then so that's further proof. So it's like, you know, if this is the way it's going to be, then there's not a motivation to just go full hinky and go wild with it.
Well, I think that's why, like, when me and Chris Vernon used to argue back and forth on the mismatch back in the day about teams bottoming out, like that was the definition of tanking, getting the top odds, 25% chance at the number one pick. The fact that it's flat now at 14% for the top three picks and the odds are higher in the middle of the lottery, to me, like, tanking now is tanking out of the play-in, right? It's like trying to get into that, you know, top 10-ish odds, you know, not being in the play-in and having a chance to make the postseason. I mean, I know that like that was always the case before. You tank out of the playoffs, out of a top 8 seed to get, you know, the 9th or the 10th or the 11th. But those odds were never really anything worth a crap, right? Like they just weren't.
Yeah.
But now they are. So I think that's the difference now when it comes to dropping out of the 10 play-in spot to get to the 11 or 12th worst record in your respective conference. And ultimately, there's only 5 or so teams that you could throw into that category of like, should they or shouldn't they, like to tank or not to tank? Because right now, out of all the lottery teams, you know, we mentioned Pistons, Hornets, Rockets, and Spurs. Those teams are just bad. You know, the Magic and Thunder, they're just not good. They're not tanking. OKC just put 150 on Boston on Tuesday night without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like,
that was great. That was wild.
Josh Giddey's shooting like over 40% from three since early December. Like he looks really awesome right now.
The Chip England effect, you think?
Very well.
He was improving already.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it could be the Chip England effect there. And you know, Jalen Williams looks good. You know, Orlando had a 6-game winning streak just a couple of weeks ago. And then the Lakers, the Wolves, and the Warriors, all of them are competing for the playoffs. Lakers don't have their pick. The Wolves don't have their pick. The Warriors are trying to win an NBA Finals. Clearly. So like that, I mean, like, you know, it's right now. Who does that leave? It leaves the Bulls, the Raptors, the Wizards, the Hawks, and the Jazz. Those are really the only 5 teams I look at right now and say, will they make the choice to tank? Will they trade away good quality veteran players to say, you know what, these flattened odds, we don't need to get to number 1. We can get to number 6 or number 7 or number 5 even if Orlando starts winning some games over the end of the regular season. That's what's changed with like the new lottery rules, Kyle, I think is like for teams like that in that middle phase where you don't have to bottom out, you just need to be a little bit worse than the play-in.
I think all of those teams kind of have something in common, and that is like kind of unexpected change of plans. Like I feel like they definitely had plans that for circumstantial, just one reason or another. Like the Hawks, the thing just hasn't gelled. You could go just line by line and look at each of these teams. Like the Jazz accidentally are good. You know, well they've kind of regressed a little bit from their white hot start. That was an interesting. They came really close to winning that game last night. That was a fun.
That was
watch.
wild. Fox,
I was thinking
man.
It's really interesting how the odds thing has evolved over the years. Like considering they have that, it's taken time. Like it's been sort of a glacial process to get here. But I was reading about like I think for nearly 20 years they did it a system where the worst team from each conference flipped a coin to see who would get the number 1 pick, and then they went by record. And it's just wild to think about like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went to the Bucks because of a literal coin flip. And can you imagine if live on TV, if like they flipped a coin for Victor Wembanyama, it would break the internet.
It's pretty good drama when you think about it.
You come to that. I mean, it's a horribly, it's a messed up system. It would take us back, but I think it's thinking about that being decided by a coin flip, yeah, I mean, that would be unbelievable television.
What are some other goofy ways you can, like a game of cornhole?
We do Ninja Warrior, and the GM for each team, whoever gets the furthest. Sam Presti versus Masai, or I don't know, Sam Presti versus
how about like Survivor?
Yeah, I think that's
like
awesome.
Actual Survivor.
Yeah, an actual game, or just a boxing match. I don't know. There's arm wrestling. Yeah, Jessie, our producer, suggested a game of horse. I think there's, the basketball history guys would have a little bit more of an advantage there. I don't know. Hit us up and let us know what you think would be an amazing live TV event.
A good one. A good one for Wembanyama. Squid Game.
Squid Game. Netflix tie-in. We're losing. We're giving away money here. Leaving money on the table. Yeah, I think that would be a good one. Let us know if you have a better answer though.
Let's play a little game here, Kyle. Push for the playoffs, sniff around, or blow it up. You're going to choose from each of those three little categories for those 5 teams that we mentioned: the Bulls, the Raptors, Wizards, Hawks, and Jazz. What path should they take moving forward? Push for the playoffs, which means keep trying to win games, maybe make the playoffs, or at least like maintain the status quo. Like the Bulls would not be trading DeRozan, Levine, and all that. Sniff around means explore some trades. You're listening to offers that come in, and maybe you're having some meetings internally about, hey, should we actually do this? And then blow it up, like without question, blow it up. Like that's what I'm talking about with those teams. Like without question, that's the direction you're going. That's my vibe, and I'm blowing up. I'm just saying it right now, Kyle, for all 5 of these teams. But in reality, blow it up does have elements of sniff around because you don't know what deals will be available for those players. But that's the intentions. Like that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, they're kind of inextricable in a way.
Yes. Just to give some context to the lottery numbers here ahead of, the other teams that we talk about. 5th worst record gets a 21% chance at the top 2, 42.1% at the top 4. 6th worst gets 18.2% chance at the top 2, Wemby or Scoot. 37.2% at the top 4. 7th worst gets 15.3% chance at the top 2, 31.9% at the top 4. So let's start off with the Utah Jazz, Kyle, the one Western Conference team of the 5 we mentioned. They're the 10 seed in the West right now, 19-21, 13th worst record in the entire NBA. You had mentioned in passing earlier how Utah has regressed a bit. They've lost 5 in a row right now. Heartbreaking loss last night against the Sacramento Kings. At the moment, they have a 2.1% chance at a top 2 pick, 4.8% odds at a top 4 pick. But they're only a game and a half back from the 6th worst record. As I said, an 18% chance at the top 2, 30% at the top 4. So they kind of already blew it up. They traded Rudy Gobert. They traded Donovan Mitchell, Mr. 71 points. But they still have like some talent. Jordan Clarkson that they could move. They have like even some younger guys that teams could maybe overpay for, a Jared Vanderbilt type, where they have Walker Kessler right now who could really, play 30 plus minutes per game. What are you doing with the Utah Jazz, Kyle? Push for the playoffs, sniff around, or blow it up?
I wrote down sniff around as a way of blowing it up. Like we said, they're connected. Mm-hmm. I think they have pieces that could be valuable for teams that are sort of on the precipice or are close, that are desirable for teams. And if you can find those right moves, I would do it. And then if I'm them and I get in a position to where I can move up in the draft, I'm just taking the best available player, which is kind of my philosophy in general. But it's sort of a... What do you think that they should do, Kev? What do you think the Jazz, what should be on their mind? What should they be thinking right now?
I mean, I think with them, like you said it, like they probably, it's more stiff around than just straight blow it up, considering that they already did that, with Gobert and Mitchell. But ultimately, like they do have some quality talent that would be appealing to other teams. The interesting thing with them is like they just dumped Bojan Bogdanovic on Detroit earlier this year instead of taking that Lakers offer with Russell Westbrook, the future first, for like multiple guys. I think that Jazz front office was banking on, okay, we're not taking anything from Bogdanovic now. This is a tanking maneuver, but then we could potentially get more for the Jordan Clarksons of the world, later than we can right now. That's my assessment, based on some conversations with people around the league. But the variable is they never could have expected that they'd be this good or this competitive, or that Lauri Markkanen would blossom into an all-star guy. Like, he's a legit all-star for Utah right now. So I think with them, like, if I were a Jazz fan right now watching this team, like, why would you want to trade Mike Conley or Jordan Clarkson or Kelly Olynyk? Like, all of those guys, or Rudy Gay, right? Any of them, Malik Beasley. Like, the team just has good vibes right now.
Yeah, but I've made this point before. Like, sometimes when you go on a run like that, you're surprising the league. They're not ready for you. That was the structure of this team. We've talked with Mo Tequila about this, that like once the film room gets in there and they have something to analyze, things can change, and things can regress, things can level out. I mean, you don't want to be a prisoner to the good vibes in the moment. And as we know, Danny Ainge is pretty ruthless, I guess would be a word that you could use. I mean, I don't think
very fair. Emotionless as well. Like he traded Isaiah Thomas months after he had an MVP season.
Yeah. Well, your opinion, MVP season. No, we won't get.
Well, he was top 5. He was top 5.
Right. I think that he made the right move in that situation, but I think
100% the right move. Like, you gotta be, cutthroat when you're an NBA GM or owner. If you're an owner, like, the thing about Ainge with Boston that I'm sure he has with Utah is, like, ownership approved him to do what he thought was best to win a championship. And, like, why would you not be exploring deals at this point?
It's the best time to do it. Honestly, it's like I always say that, like, they talk about when you're saving money for this is like such an adult lame-o comparison I'm going to make, but they say whenever you're saving money for your 401k, it should sting a little bit. I always think about that whenever teams are like, I just think that's like the opportunistic time to move. You don't want to like settle in. It's sort of like playing against a set defense. You want to like make your move when the pieces are moving, when things are good, because if you wait, then like your leverage can change. We've seen that happen all the time. Like, if an asset regresses, then your leverage might be different, and the whole league knows that. So they're operating with a lot of knowledge, more knowledge than ever. So where does that leave us with the Jazz? So do you think they should make a move? Did you ever officially answer?
I think if the moves are available, if you can get a first for Jordan Clarkson or high quality pick for a Malik Beasley, I'd do it. I think it would hurt, it would sting, but you still have so much young talent. You'd just be a little bit worse. But ultimately, like, it's possible that those deals aren't there and they end up staying in the spot that they are. So for each of these players, each of these teams, we're going to choose a player that would make sense for them if they do stay in the spot that they are. So with the 13th worst record, the guy I have in mind is one of your favorites, Kyle, from Kentucky, Cason Wallace. Point guard. I really like Wallace. Good defensive player, great point of attack defender. And I think with the guys like Lauri Markkanen and the style of offense that they play right now, keeping the ball moving, multiple ball handlers, Cason Wallace, what we've seen with Kentucky this year is he's not a number one primary, but he's exactly that kind of gap filler. And I think he would be a really nice fit with their existing pieces there. What do you think about like a Cason Wallace for a team like the Jazz?
My affection for his game predates him signing with Kentucky. I mean, so I was obviously very happy when that happened because I'm a big fan of his. People sold me on him early, but he's been shooting the shit out of the ball too. That's another development that's been awesome. I think his mechanics have looked good. 45.6% from 3 on 4.9 assists or 4.9 attempts this season and 3.9 assists. So he's been disruptive. He's shared the ball. He hasn't quite evolved into like the on-ball threat that they want. That's always kind of a push and pull with Cal guys. He likes to have his speedy point guard, and then you wish that he put those guys on ball and let them be point guards. But apparently he's not quite ready for they got to win games. So at this point they're kind of playing it safe, I guess. But I think he could work in those 3-guard lineups because he's shown some of the playmaking and the switchability and the point of attack pressure, like you said. Love Cason Wallace. He's a competitor. I think he would fit in with a lot of teams in the league, honestly, based on the things that he offers.
No doubt about it, he would. And let's move on to the next team, the Raptors, the 12th seed in the East right now. They're 16-21, tied for the 6th worst record. They're just 3 back from the 5th worst record, and right now they have a 21% chance at the top 2, 42.1% chance at the top 4. So they already have good odds at the moment. The, I guess, issue for them is the fact that they have also a lot of good talent. And with them, maybe that they rise back up, find themselves in the play-in, make the playoffs. Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, those are just a handful of guys that maybe could be available if they were to go down this route. What do you want to do if you're Toronto, Kyle? Push for the playoffs, sniff around, or blow it up?
I'm feeling out the market. They're in a really kind of precarious situation because the 3 guys that they have, although they do different things, like I feel like their 3 best players are all forwards who, if you move one of them, you could potentially address your needs. Sirat and I yesterday on The Answer were talking about the Raptors feel like they're playing blackjack and they're like sitting on 15 or 16 and they're not sure whether to hit, because it seems like if they get the right piece, the roster is going to make sense. But right now, it's like they had this glut of kind of overlap among the guys that they have. Like one key piece could help it click into place and make it look totally different.
Do they need to trade those guys to continue being bad? Is this team actually just not good?
I think the East is really good is one thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you can get in, they play a style that's tedious. It's annoying to play. They're always going to be a headache, but it's kind of like, it's a ceiling conversation too for me, because they're going to have to do something to address their ceiling, because as it currently exists, I don't know that they're going to get there. Like, I feel like Pascal, he was number 14 in our NBA player rankings. I don't think that he's quite in that like elite superstar tier. And to compete in the East, you need somebody like that. So I kind of lean towards them feeling out the market and trying to make some kind of a move, because they have a lot of highly desirable pieces. What do you think?
I think feel out the market is the right path for them right now. Like, you're not going to just dump any of those guys. Like, they're good quality players, people you could want to re-sign long-term and be part of your future. Like Siakam, he continues to get better even though he's in his late 20s right now. He gets better every single year still. And I think he's one of those guys that rate of improvement won't necessarily stop. If anything, if they add, like Fred VanVleet last year, maybe that goes down as an outlier season for him. He has not been nearly as good this year. But if you can find like a better version of VanVleet, either through the draft, like Scoot Henderson, can you imagine Scoot with Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam? Like, if you keep what you have with OG, Siakam, Barnes, and then you happen to win the lottery and you land Scoot Henderson with the 2nd pick, like, my goodness, like, that'd be perfect. Like, that's exactly what you need. But at the same time, like, I think we saw last year with them, they started off, I think, under 500 until either late December or maybe it was like around this time last season where they were under 500, and then they won almost 50 games.
Yeah.
So I think they have that upside to just rattle off a tough bunch of wins to end the year and ruin their lottery odds, but also be the team people thought they were again, right? So I can see it either way for them. And I think the other thing to consider is, with Siakam, you mentioned he's not that mega star, number 1 star on a championship team type of guy. His contract is going to be coming up soon. And he's probably the guy who's going to be getting paid that type of money. So, like, if you're the Raptors, you have to ask yourself, do we want to be paying Siakam when we have OG's contract coming up as well, and Scotty Barnes will be ending his rookie deal? Like, those are the questions I'm thinking about when it comes to the choice now makes a big difference with what you're going to be deciding what you want to be in 3 or 4 years. And to me, like, if you can find 3 or 4 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam, maybe with a couple young pieces like that, that's a very appealing path, moving forward for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like it's a step backward for potentially a few steps forward. And I think that reasoning makes sense. I mean, obviously, if you could get Scoot, I feel like Scoot would be a supercharged version of what Jalen Suggs hypothetically would have been for them if they had decided to take him. I think ultimately that was the right decision. But I think the salary situation with Pascal that you brought up, I think is it's almost like pruning. I feel like that could be the right move to potentially help them get something that optimizes with what they have. And it makes sense to me. Yeah. I mean, right now they need some like ball skills, playmaking. They need some connectivity in passing the ball, and they need a competent rim runner, rim protector type, and there's there's some guys in the draft that they could get. I mean, we've talked a lot about like Lively. But I think like even a live dribble shooter like a Keontae George could be interesting with them. I don't know if they would go for him or like a Tyrese Proctor or an Anthony Black if they're available.
Totally. I mean, like I think for the nice thing about this draft is there's got to be good players available in the late lottery in the middle of the first round, right? So I think there's almost not a lot of incentive for being number 6 or number 7. Like I don't think the guys available there are that dramatically different than the guys that'll be there, 8 to 10 picks after. What do you think about that, Kyle, when it comes to the draft maybe flattening out after the top 2 to 5 prospects when it comes to quality of the talent?
It's the same thing that we do every year. I feel like where we're looking at like the athletes are getting the benefit of the doubt. Like if you think about like the Asars, the Amens, the Cam Whitmores, the Jarris Walkers, those guys are sort of they're being projected sort of in that range. And then there's the more nuanced skill sort of guys like the Anthony Blacks, the Tyrese Proctor, the Dariq Whitehead, Grady Dick. Those types of players are getting pushed into that late lottery, and you could easily see one of those guys hitting and being better than all those like more athletic projected guys that we were talking about before. So I don't necessarily, I think I agree with you. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get to 6. If you can get in that range, you could potentially get there's a lot of skill like in that range. Like you think about Jet Howard as another guy. You think about Derek, like I said, Derek Lively's been interesting. I don't know. There's a couple projects too that I think that, like Raptors-y projects, like rim protectors that I think are interesting. Janai Broom for Auburn is a guy who's averaging almost 3 blocks a game, and then Jamari and Sharp for Western.
How about Deron Holmes with Dayton? Another one.
Yeah.
Maybe not mid-first, but...
No. These are projects.
Yes.
I was looking at those guys and just looking at block percentage and kind of like Raptors-y type projects. I could see any of those guys going there.
It's interesting with Toronto because like they always take those projects, right? Bruno Caboclo being the number one, the player that comes to mind. And they could have those options in this year's draft. But like also like wouldn't it be cool to see them bring in that top prospect with their existing talent? Like I just think like you said it, Kyle, couple steps back for like huge leaps forward potentially in the years to come. And even if because here's the thing, like if they trade away some of these guys and they end up with the 5th or 6th worst record and then they don't win the lottery, they don't land in the top 4, they end up with the 8th pick, that's still like a good place to be this year because like you're getting all the choice of everything you're talking about after that big lump up top. I'd be intrigued with them. Like you mentioned the need for a bigger rim protector, the need for a creation guard. The thing is like I wonder if they do land in the middle of the lottery, could they just take another big wing? Could they do that? I'm not kidding you because they also just need straight up shooting. And so a guy we've talked about a lot on this podcast, Brandon Miller, out of Alabama, he's a player that I'd be very intrigued by because with him, the concern is creation, scoring inside the arc. But if you have him spacing for Scotty Barnes and the mismatches that would be created, the spacing he would be provide for those guys, I think it'd be very intriguing fit as they build out their lineup of like all guys between 6'7" and 6'10".
Yeah, and if you did that, I mean, let's say you move Siakam, and then you can bring in sort of a facsimile for that mold. I don't know. I don't think his wingspan's quite as long as Pascal's. I don't have that in front of me, but not exactly the same type of athletes. But if you look at like the developmental timeline where Miller is right now compared to where like Pascal, hard to compare anybody to Pascal developmentally because he's just sort of unprecedented for how good he got in such a weird short amount of time. But I think if you did get that would be a way to just kind of bring it in, reset the timeline. They're just kind of in a no man's land where you're playing the superstar acquisition game. You need a big guy like that. You need to create it. Like those are 2 really valuable asset types in the league. It's interesting just how some teams' competency can like kind of work against them and put them in tough situations. You just got to try to find a way to play that lottery and get a superstar. I don't know that they're necessarily going to get it this way, but getting Brandon Miller would be a nice fit for them.
How about the Bulls, Kyle? They're the 11th seed in the East right now, 17-22, also tied for the 6th worst records. They have the same odds right now as the Raptors, 42.1% at top 4, 21% at the top 2. Their pick is their situation's much different though, because their pick is only top 4 protected. So if they were to keep it this year by landing in the top 4, then next year's pick, which would be going to Orlando, is only top 3 protected. So their situation is much different than all of these other teams. They can't land in the middle of the lottery. They just lose their pick outright to the Magic. But they could try to just be bad and keep their strong odds right now.
Yeah.
What do you think the Bulls should do, Kyle? Should they push for the playoffs, sniff around, or blow it up?
I just picture you like doing like 20 somersaults off of like a diving board and landing on like one of those dynamite ignition things, like you just push it down and blow it up. I would just be interested to see how bad it would be. An interesting experiment to see how bad they could get in a short amount of time. We're like, 30 something games in at this point. They're in a similar situation where their experiment just didn't quite work. Obviously, you need to get as bad as you can, but it's probably, it's a lot more likely that you're going to land in that range, that non-top 4 range. What do you think? Where are you leaning on this? I think they should tank.
I've been there. I've been there since November.
Yeah.
I wrote.
You were
about
early
this.
on it.
I wrote about this in early November about their issues, and I think in the 2 months since, it's been clear as day that this team has no shot with the current core that they have. And it's unfortunate, Lonzo Ball was a huge part of that. It's a connective piece on offense, and the awesome defender that he is. It just hasn't worked out. Simple as that. It hasn't worked out. And now you consider Vooch. Like, think about the way Brook Lopez with Milwaukee, he offers spacing on offense, interior presence as well, but he's become like a awesome rim protector, defensive player of the year candidate. Vooch has not improved a lick on defense from what he was in Orlando, despite having a lower offensive usage. He is still a bad rim protector. And that's one of the big differences there, where I thought, that was part of their bet on trading for Vooch. Maybe we get better defense from him with a lower offensive usage. It has not happened. So I think right now, considering Vooch can be a free agent this coming summer, he could just walk for nothing. DeRozan can be a free agent the year after. You got Caruso, who could be a value to teams. LaVine on a long-term contract. A lot of teams would want Zach LaVine as one of their pieces. They view him as like a number 2, number 3 option on a title team. Like, I think they have a lot of talent. It's just the mix doesn't work there, and the incentive is too significant for them. This is the year. Your most valuable asset in your organization is that top 4 protected pick. Next year's draft doesn't have the mega stars, franchise changers like Victor Wembanyama. It doesn't have that. That's your shot at actually building a sustainable winner. I think they, without question, should be trading those guys, and there would be good deals available for them.
I think so. Honestly, I was going down the roster and just trying to figure out like what would be nailed down for me, and that pick is the only thing. I would part with everything on the roster.
That's it.
Like I'm not committed or beholden to anything. So,
because what move can they make to go the other way, right? Like, there's nothing out there right now.
No, I'll take it a step further, Kev. When they made all these moves, I loved it. I loved watching them. They were super fun. But I don't know if you have intel on that they actually legitimately thought that Vucevic could become.
It was like a bet. Like, guys,
right.
He has such a high offensive usage with Orlando. Maybe there's improvement. It has not happened.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that was going to happen. I had those questions even when they were at full strength. So if you consider that, like, they were probably a move away even then. So I think that, I would free fall, swan dive towards the bottom as fast as I could. Wear weights, throw me off a cliff.
They do have the Blazers pick incoming. If the Blazers pick is lottery protected. So right now it's the 18th pick. If that ends up like 15 to 18, Kyle, like, they will have a first round pick. They won't have their own, but are there any guys in that range? Maybe they could add, regardless of what they do with their own choice.
I'm of two minds here. Like I said, I'm always best player available. Like, if you're fit, or you just pick a super malleable role player type, like somebody that can interface with a lot of different types of players. I think Jett Howard is a really interesting player that has upside. That is one of those skilled players that's maybe getting pushed down because of the things that we talked about. I think that he would be interesting. Another one is I think you kind of look for a distressed asset, like we always talk about. That's always a good value play for teams. Like they can steal players when they get misvalued because of like weird circumstances. Tariq Whitehead, I don't know that he's going to fall this far. One of those two guys, I would lean towards. I think Bryce Sensabaugh is also interesting, but I would lean towards Jett Howard. I've liked Jett this year.
Next up, Kyle, let's talk about the Wizards real quick. 10 seed in the East, 17-22, 10th worst record, which means they currently have a 6.3% chance at the top 2, 13.9% chance at the top 4. They're only percentage points worse than the 6th worst record at the moment. Bradley Beal has a no-trade clause. He'd be the main guy that you'd be trying to move if you were willing to go to a team. Again, like with Chicago having a top 4 protected pick, the Beal no-trade clause is a really strange variable with the places that they could go. But with that said, if you're Tommy Shepard in their front office, would you want to push for the playoffs, sniff around, or blow it up?
I don't even know what we're doing. Like if we're the Wizards, like I like what have we been doing? We're just like successfully hovering in this zone, this dead zone for so long. I mean, I would blow it up. I think they've got a few pieces that teams could want. I mean, Kuzma obviously has been talked about, has had big improvement. I think DeLon Wright is a sneaky underrated player. I always thought he'd be interesting as like a second side creator. Didn't quite work with Luka like I thought it would. Monte Morris is a good player that could come in. I think they have some pieces that they could move. You're already bad on the trajectory that you had. If you move some of those guys, you get a little bit worse. Why not? I think go feel out the market, similar to the Jazz. Feel out the market, but with the intention of trying to get worse, you know.
And they're like the perfect type of team that we're talking about here. They're currently the 10 seed, and they'd be playing play-in games if the season ended today. And they very well might end up the 9 or the 10 by the time the year is over. Like Porzingis has been really good this year. Mm-hmm. Beal has gotten better after his slow start. Like you said, they have some talent on their team. It's just for them, like drafting Rui Hachimura didn't work out. He has not blossomed in the way that they hoped he would when they took that swing at him. Denny Avdia, same thing, has not worked out on offense. He's a good defensive player. He can do some things for you on offense, but he's not like a creator. He's not showing the flashes that we saw overseas. And Corey Kispert, he's a solid bench player at the moment. But none of those guys have popped to support Beal in the way that they need. And by the way, like Porzingis has been good this year. I still don't trust him to like stay healthy over the duration of the year, considering his history year after year after year. So with them, they might just be bad anyway, but they're also good enough that they could just slip into the play-in by accident. And that's what screws up your odds and a chance at a top pick. So with them, I'd be willing to trade any of those guys. It sounds like Kuzma is a guy that will be available for the right offer, and he's been great this year. So maybe Porzingis, another guy. You know, maybe Porzingis is like he's on a player option for next year. It's not like a long-term bet here for KP. I could see a team wanting him if they want some rim protection this season. If you're the Wizards, like you can trade around Beal as well. Even if Beal says, "I don't want to go anywhere. I'm here to stay. You're not trading me. I don't care." You could trade around him and still be terrible. So I'm aiming towards blow it up if you're the Wizards. The tough one here is the last team of these 5, Kyle. The Hawks. They're currently the 9 seed in the Eastern Conference, and they're 17-20, the 12th worst record in all of basketball. They have a 3.2% chance at the top 2, 7.1% chance at the top 4. But they're only 1 game back from the 6th worst record, which, as we said before, is an 18.2% chance at the top 2, 37.2% chance at the top 4. So significantly better than what they have right now if they were to stay in the play-in and miss the playoffs. You know, in recent weeks, there's been reports about Trae Young. You know, Chris Haynes reported on Bleacher Report. Trae could be the guy that is the next star to demand a trade if things don't work out for Atlanta in the playoffs. They might not even make the playoffs. And if they do make the playoffs, they're going to get smacked around by Brooklyn or Milwaukee or Boston or Cleveland or Philly. Like, I don't know who it's going to be, but they're going to get their ass kicked.
Mm-hmm.
This team is not going to make a run again. So maybe it comes to that point with Trae where he's the one who's making demands. Maybe they work through it. Who knows? But I'm on the side of the fence here with Trae that if I'm Atlanta, I'm sniffing around with Trae Young at the moment. Like, clearly sniffing around. And I don't know though, like what Trey's a great player. He's a brilliant creator on offense. But like you asked me earlier, like which teams would fit for Scoot? Where would he start now? We're talking about like best fits for him. Like there's not a lot of teams that we named like 10, but that's a third of the league.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of teams that need a point guard, never mind a 6 foot, sub 190 pound point guard that barely plays defense and is clearly a target on that end of the floor.
Yeah, the disparity between his talent, he's such an odd player to discuss because the disparity between how talented he is, we all agree, one of the most brilliant like handler, passer, shooters in the world. Like he's so unbelievably talented, but then you like start stacking all these other factors on that, like he's hard to play with. He doesn't defend. He has a weird play style that is tricky. Like aside from like people just liking to play with him, like it's hard to like work around him sometimes because of his preferences. It makes you wonder like who would even be interested in bringing that on. Like that was the question that I posed to you. So that they're in a tough situation where, but I do think that there are a small handful of teams I think that would consider it and could turn the Hawks into like a pretty interesting team in the short term, in my opinion.
So who comes to mind then for you for a Trey trade?
There's only 3 teams that I could even see tackling this. And you can tell me if you agree or disagree. I was going down just line by line, like philosophically, financially, chemistry-wise. It filters out a lot of the teams. The first one that I thought was New York. Like
no way. No chance.
You don't think so?
They didn't want Mitchell. Why would they want Trey? They're all about Brunson.
They didn't get Mitchell. That didn't happen.
Well, they didn't go all in, though.
Right. Well, we're talking pure, strong hypothetical here. Washington was another one that I thought was interesting.
Imagine the heel turn, Trey,
well, that's what I was thinking.
With the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, the love and hate are so close together, right? I just think it'd be funny if they brought him in. They're like,
they would grow to love Trey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A nice strong personality in there. The most interesting one to me, I don't think this would happen, but I do think it's interesting, is Minnesota. What if Minnesota and Atlanta could figure up a deal? This won't happen. What if Minnesota sent Karl Anthony Towns, probably a non-starter, and Jordan McLaughlin for Trey in a 2023 second round pick, which is New York's. I think that would be interesting, but I do think that like Trey, Anthony Edwards, and Rudy Gobert would create maybe one of the weirdest chemistry experiments in the history of sports. I think they'd be miserable. Like on paper, I think that basketball team is interesting, but that would turn Atlanta into a squad. Like Deontay, Cat, Collins, Hunter, Griffin. That's a good team. I think that makes them better. Do you think so?
Yeah. I mean, I'm into it in theory. I hate it for Minnesota. Like, what a miserable team they would be.
It would be terrible.
I mean, they're already miserable, though, so I guess nothing changes in that sense. But if you make a change, like, I think you got to go from miserable to at least feeling some little bit of joy.
Right. Do you have any kind of just rough idea on, is there any suitor out there that makes sense? I don't know how much you've even thought about this.
The teams I have on my list for Trey, Chicago, if they were to say, we're not going to blow it up, we're going to go the other way, we're going to try to, go for it. I wouldn't do it. I would not trade for Trey if I'm Chicago, but I could see them as a team that makes sense. Washington, again, same concept here. A team that should be going the other way, but says, you know what, we're going for it. A Trae Young, Bradley Beal backcourt just feels like the most Wizards possible thing imaginable.
No.
So I'm thinking about this from the Atlanta perspective. Who could be like the destinations for Trae that could offer appealing packages? Miami, like that's a tough deal in terms of salary matching, but like I could see the Heat saying, Heat culture. We're bringing in Trey. He's going to.
They'd have to give up Bam, wouldn't they? When they have to give to make the salaries match.
No, Kyle Lowry. You could give up Lowry in the deal.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to give up Bam. But
how about in the last one, Toronto? If Toronto were to say we're trying to add, they went for Kevin Durant previously. What if they say this is our point guard? Surround him with all these long-armed wing defenders. I could see that as well.
That's a hyper accountable defensive culture in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like it
would
not work.
Well, but maybe but if you're Toronto, I would not do this. But I'm saying if you were to talk yourself into doing it, you're saying, oh, our culture can accommodate anybody. And we'll instill buy-in. And even if he doesn't buy in, we have enough supporting pieces to cover up for him. Because that's what Atlanta's tried to do.
Yeah.
Drafting Cam Reddish, drafting DeAndre Hunter, drafting AJ Griffin, all these wing defenders that they've tried to surround Trae with. Like they did go to an East Finals. Like they have shown that you can have some level of success with Trae Young despite, his limitations on defense. It's just a thought on my mind. Like that, those are the teams that come to mind. And like, if you really want to get crazy, Dallas as well.
I thought about that. About that. You couldn't defensively put those two guys together.
I agree.
But it's like Trae's entering like Russ territory for me. Like where I just wouldn't. It's a non-starter. Like I'm just not going to trade for him. There's just so many like things that have bubbled up. Like I have unbelievable respect for his talent, but I just think all the caveats would just make it so difficult. I think when you're looking at the league and who would consider doing it, it's tough.
Somebody would trade for him. It's
Somebody
just a matter of it's a matter of who would do it, because his offensive talent is brilliant and it's undeniable. His creation, and if like things. Like I sometimes I have this file on my computer of like some of his off-screen scoring at Oklahoma. The dude was good, man. He's not Steph, but he could like pull a Dame. Like if he wanted to say, I'm going to become Damian Lillard off ball, he showed enough flashes to me in Oklahoma that I think if he wanted to lean all the way into that with some of the, the V cuts and the zigzagging, like going around screens, trying to create space, he has it in him. It's just he's, tasted this, on-ball usage for the last 5 years in Atlanta, being the go-to guy, and he just doesn't do it anymore. And it's your turn, my turn with him and Murray. And I think if you're Trae Young, like when I tweeted out a couple of weeks ago after that Chris Haynes report, his dad responded to me saying, the problem with these reports are people talking about like how nobody would want them. And I responded saying to Trae's dad, like, yeah, but me talking and these reports are all just noise.
Yeah.
Like it's to Trae, it should be completely irrelevant. All that matters are the things that are in Trae's control. Being the best player that I can be, being the best teammate that I can be, being the best leader that I can be. And for Trae, like he needs to look in the mirror, in my opinion, and say, am I being the best version of myself? Like the answer is no. Like in terms of basketball, like he is the best he can be on ball. He's brilliant. But off ball, man, like he's got to show some effort when you have a teammate like DeJounte Murray. You just got to be better off ball.
Did you see them defensively against Clay the other night with the Warriors?
God.
It was when you're picking up for people over and over again. You talked about them building the roster. It's like when you're picking up for somebody over and over, like team defense is a team sport, man. I mean, like it's both ways, but I mean, you owe something to the person that you're guarding with, and it's not like an on an island thing. And I just think. I don't know. I just think he's sort of like that Caesar analogy where it's like he got a taste of the power of being the emperor and having the ball, and it's like once you get a taste of that, a lot of guys don't go back. Like we see, we always year after year we're like, Harden is this year he's going to start drifting off the ball and moving and things like that. It's like no, probably not.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I've hoped for those things for a long time. Even now, Harden still doesn't shoot off the catch. Even though he used to be like a knockdown guy, 40+%. So with the Hawks, like it's unlikely that they were to trade Trae. Yeah. You never know. Unlikely. Right now, they have the 12th worst record. If they stay in the spot that they are, Kyle, who is a prospect that stands out to you that they should target?
I just think I would pick somebody with some size and some deferential kind of playmaking connectivity in their game. I think Anthony Black, we mentioned him before, has a great assist to usage. He's shooting has looked streaky, spotty, but decent. Arkansas' situation this year has kind of changed a little bit, and I know they're feeling that out with injuries and with Nick Smith being out of the lineup. But that's one guy. That's the type of guy I would be going after. But another guy that's interesting is Maxwell Lewis for Pepperdine, second-year guy. Maxwell is 6'7", has a 6'10" wingspan. He turned 20 years old in July. This is a guy who shoots the ball really well. We always like to reference our guys at Cerebro. In college right now, he has an 11.4 CRAM, which is a gold rating, which is really good. He 7.4 BPM, 62% true shooting. 19.4 points, but he is a 43.8% shooter on 4.3 attempts. Great shooter. The thing right now is that his skill set, I wouldn't describe it as like live dribble yet. He's not an off the bounce creator. A lot of the things, but he does things that I like. He uses his passing gravity pretty well when he's coming off of screens. Recently, they played Gonzaga, which was one of our TV guide recommendations that people check out. That's a conference game. A lot of the games that we're going to be recommending coming up are going to be conference games because they move into that part of the schedule. But he just looked really comfortable. I don't know if you got to see in the first 5 minutes of the game, he hit some shots. He back cut some guys, but a lot of that was sort of working in concert with the fact that Gonzaga was afraid of his shooting. And it was really nice to see his passing and his awareness of his own gravity kind of working together. So I like Maxwell Lewis.
I like Lewis a lot. He's in his second year now at Pepperdine, and the improvement from last season to now, pretty significant with his shooting ability. And like you mentioned, he's not a live dribble playmaker yet. He doesn't run a pick and roll for them at all. Or doesn't create a lot in the pick and roll as a playmaker. But the scoring ability, I think he's good enough as a passer, and as a ball handler that someday over the course of time that playmaking is going to be activated even more than it is now. If the handling continues getting better, there could be a little bit of lead creation ability. Maybe. Not necessarily. He's a bit, doesn't have the quickest burst off the dribble, but he shows passing feel, passing vision, right? So I think with him, that's where the appeal is with him, for any team, whether it's Atlanta in the middle of the first round. We talked about Toronto if they stand pat with where they are. He could fit with anybody. If Golden State, ends up with the 17th pick or 18th pick, can you imagine him, playing with Steph and Clay and Draymond? He'd fit in right away because he's a connector. He doesn't need to be a lead creator, but he's a connective piece who can shoot and make the right play for a roster.
Yeah, I think the skill set that I was describing fits. That is Golden State's philosophy, the awareness, and that's the thing that they try to get guys to do instinctively, and you see that from him. And he's sort of like if Max Christie had played another year. He's kind of in that his developmental path is similar, I think, to Christie, in the fact that it's he's a good shooter, but those things haven't quite evolved to the live dribble. And if he did have the live dribble stuff, I think we'd start to talk about him like we do Jalen Williams, who's killing it for the Thunder this year. I mean, he's right. You were talking about his pick and roll load, 15 pick and rolls this year, and only 3 of those led to points of some kind, and 7 were turnovers. So basically, he's either turning the corner and hitting a shot, which he can, or he's not. I mean, and he's also shown a little bit of attacking smaller guards with a back to the basket game. I don't know how much of that
that's so nice. It's so gorgeous. I love when he post up on a smaller guy. They talk about NBA switching screens. That looks like that could be a valuable tool for him in the NBA.
Yeah, I think it'll be more of a counter for him. I don't know that it'll be something he'll do all the time, but I always love guys who, if they get in a spot up situation and there's a switch or there's this off ball screen and he gets a good advantage there. I like guys that have that in their bag because bully ball ain't dead, Kev. It's still out there.
No doubt about it. He's we talked about the Warriors fit, or any team that uses motion, Indiana, Sacramento, some of those teams that right now they have 20 picks in the early 20s. Lewis his range right now is probably late lottery, 10, 11, 12 to early 20s. It's so early in the process right now, but Lewis is in that wide range. But his cutting is so smart. He is such a cerebral player. I don't know. I feel like he's one of those players who could fit on any roster in the NBA, and he could make it work. And if his on-ball creation does grow over the course of time, if he gets a bit quicker off the dribble, the handle gets a little bit tighter, maybe you'll see some more isolation scoring out of him. I kind of look at him in a developmental trajectory for a Devin Vassell.
Yeah.
Vassell, his freshman year at Florida State, he had I think 1 pull-up jumper the entire season, and then he had 30 plus his sophomore year, and now he's in San Antonio. He's making highlight reels on a nightly basis, taking pull-up threes and mid-range turnarounds and whatnot. He's become that type of player. So for Lewis, maybe over the course of time that happens, or it doesn't. He's still going to be a good player, with his 3-and-D baseline, 3-and-D plus, because he's a creator as well as a within the flow. There's a lot to like, man. I like Lewis a bunch.
Yeah. I think your assessment of kind of where he goes, I think if he had those other things in there right now, we'd be talking about him higher, like I said, like with Jalen. But I think that's a fair place to put him, where you put him.
Kyle, let's move on to the TV guy to close the podcast today. What are some games you'll be watching this coming week or weekend?
Like we said, we're moving into the conference stuff. I think something that we want to tease or just kind of get people ready for. We've been putting off the Connecticut conversation. It's coming for anybody who's curious about that. I've had some people ask. Connecticut has maybe we can consult Justin Verrier on that one. Our in-house Connecticut person. They're playing Creighton next on Saturday. Creighton, as we've said, has some interesting prospects, but UConn does also with Jordan Hawkins and more. But Creighton also has Kaluma, as we said. This isn't a personal one, but Alabama is playing Kentucky, and I think that'll be an interesting one with Case and Brandon Miller. That'll be a good game. Hopefully Kentucky doesn't get their asses kicked. They probably will. Tennessee and South Carolina is another one. Julian Phillips, a 6'7" freshman, going up against Gigi Jackson. If you can tolerate watching South Carolina for more than 15 minutes, I'd recommend just checking that one out.
You a Phillips guy?
I haven't totally decided, honestly. I'm kind of here and there on him right now, honestly.
I have a hard time with him.
You're having a hard time?
I want to like him. I just don't yet.
I know how that is. Before we go, did you want to hear about my interesting...
Oh, yeah, Kyle. That's right. On Twitter yesterday, I saw you had a celebrity run-in.
We don't get a lot of celebrities in Louisville of a certain level, I would say. So yesterday I was going to pick up some carryout. Meg and I had the conversation. We're like, hey, I don't feel like making anything. I want to just sit back. So I was like, sure, I'll go pick it up. Went down there, standing by the bar, waiting for a second. Wasn't quite ready. Got the text that it was ready. It wasn't ready. So I'm just standing, I'm waiting, and I'm fine. I'm fine. It's cool. So whatever, getting out of the house. But on the DoorDash thing that's connected to their site, they don't let you tip. So this is how this unfolded. So, and I was like, every time I go in there, I say, will you run my card for a penny and then I'll tip on that? Well, the host there is this really funny guy. It's this place called Chicken and Me in Louisville. It's awesome. He's a real funny guy, but I come in there and he realized that I'd asked him this question a bunch of times, and it's a loaded bar. So I'm standing at the bar and he looks at my thing and he calls me James, and he goes, oh, James. He's like this very flamboyant, like loud person. He goes, James, you always do this. So we're immediately like cutting up. And I was like, in the flow of the conversation, I just made a joke. I was like, it's not going to sound as funny as it was at the time. But I was like, hey, man, I'll keep my money. Like I said it like I was being mean, but I was being facetious. And the person that is sitting next to me at the bar turns and like kind of smiles as if he's like laughing with us. And then he says, I'm going to have an against the grain beer. And the moment he speaks, I turn and look at this person who is seriously like right next to me. It's freaking Ethan Hawke. It was Ethan Hawke. And I was like, if I'm in LA and I see Ethan Hawke, I'm like, oh, we're in LA. But for him to be at this little restaurant in Louisville, I had to control my reaction because it really floored me. I was just like, holy shit.
Did you chat with him after?
I kind of have that policy of just, I don't really bother celebrities. Like, I'm just like, they want to be left alone. If it comes up organically, like I know isn't he a big Brooklyn Nets fan? Like,
no idea.
I thought he was a big basketball fan. We'll have to ask somebody, but I didn't bother him.
I'm not even sure what movies I've seen with him in it.
Training Day, you ever seen that? You ever seen Dead Poets Society?
I saw Dead Poets Society. I do not remember seeing Training Day. I might have many years ago, but I don't remember it.
Well, he's a goddamn legend, Kev. He's a good one. So go check it out. Ethan Hawke. I don't know if he's the best actor of our
society. It might be the only one. Is that bad?
That's bad. A great movie. Did you say it's bad?
No. It's bad that I've only seen one Ethan Hawke movie. Dead Poets Society is incredible.
I was going to jump through the screen and strangle you. Yeah, that's a formative film. Anyway, saw Ethan Hawke. Blew my mind. Didn't say anything to him.
Nothing.
No. Have you? I mean, what's the big? Have you had a celebrity encounter akin to that, Kev, in your time?
Not really. No.
Yeah.
I just looked up the movies Boyhood. I think I saw Boyhood years ago.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
It's a good movie. I remember seeing that, I believe. I don't remember.
I think that other than like basketball players, I think like that's the biggest like film person that I've been in proximity to in the wild like that. Yeah, like it just by surprise. Like, I don't know.
I remember I saw the guy from Westworld, the white hat. I can't remember the actor's name, or the
Ed Harris?
No, the white
Older-
hat, not the black hat. Ed Harris was the black hat. The white hat in Westworld. I saw him coming out of a Tender Greens in Hollywood. I ran into Kiefer Sutherland after a Mount Joy concert.
Okay.
Which
Those
was
are big
awesome. Yeah. So other than that, I don't recall any instances seeing a celebrity in LA.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that happens for you. I'm sure people get starstruck when they run into Kevin O'Connor. I don't know. Most likely.
Did you hear Russillo's podcast where he got a life advice email asking about people who recognize me? I was in Houston getting sushi, and a group of like 4 or 5 guys came up to me and they said, "Hey, can you help us settle a bet?" And I was like, "Sure." And they said, "Are you Kevin O'Connor?" And I said, did the phone give it away because I was watching League Pass?
Oh, right.
I was sitting alone eating sushi. And they said, "Oh my God, like it is you." And like we talked for a couple minutes and they went back to their table. But they emailed Ryan saying, like, did we take the right approach? Like going up to him, and they showed photo evidence of me at the bar.
Oh, they took a picture of you?
Well, someone at their table took a picture of them while they were talking to me.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen the photo, but yeah, they did it right. It's totally cool. I love when people walk up and say hello. I love when that happens. It's super cool.
But we're not like bombarded like that. I mean, NBA fans that have seen us on camera, maybe that could happen. I could see. I could.
Like,
I was
even
just
if you're Ethan Hawke, like that type of thing, that must be way different if you're that level of celebrity. But I like when it happens here and there.
He wasn't exactly hiding either. He was sitting literally by the cash register at the bar. So it was just like, I guess
he started laughing with you. He was like joining the conversation.
Well,
he wanted to have a drink with you, Kyle.
Maybe. I was telling our buddy Sean Yu, I was like, I want to say he laughed at my joke, but he was kind of doing that thing whenever people are laughing where you just kind of smile big, and it was like he just was adjacent. He was adjacent to laughter. When I tell the story years from now, I'm gonna like embellish and say I made a great joke. But anyway, that's what happened.
You're like Brian Scalabrine after the Celtics won the finals in 2008. He says, in 20 years, I'm going to tell people I won finals MVP.
Yeah, just embellish as time goes on. It's sort of like I always joke with Matt Dollinger, my Top Golf night. I'm never going to play golf again. I'm just going to embellish what happened that night. I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, I had a...
You were outstanding, Kyle. You started off poorly and you ended the night looking like Tiger Woods.
Thank you, Kevin.
That's the way
I
remember it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, Kyle, we'll be back next Wednesday. This is fun, man.
A lot of ground today. We covered a lot of ground.
Covered a bunch, man. We'll be back next Wednesday. Kyle, hope you have a great rest of your week, man.
You too, buddy. See you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing us. And thank you to you for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day.